Previously on Parker Projects. The patterning, so professional. A cheeky mock-up. I always secretly wanted a lightsaber even though I'm not a Star Wars nerd, but I love Star Wars nerds. So you better believe I gave myself 2 of them. Yeah. Oh, look, it's a staff now. Ooh, so fancy. There's no time to waste. Denia needs us.
Round 1, fight!
Back at it again with the Worbla creation. You've seen me use Worbla's Transpa art, and you've also seen me use their black art. If you have not, you can check on either of these videos to go see that. But this time I'm going to be using the OG Worbla's Finest art. But before we get there, I need to clean up the Underbust Armor. I added in a little piece of foam to fill in this gap that I had at the front, and now I'm just using Quick Seal to fill in the gaps and just make sure that we don't have any gapping or weird lines coming through the front. You just apply a little bit. It's safe enough to even do with your finger. You just smooth it into the grooves. Then you can use a little bit of water to clean it up, make sure it's really nice and smooth, and that you'll have a nice surface to work from. And of course my hand is in the way of me doing all of this, but you get the idea. Full disclosure, this is my first time using Quick Seal, but it is a common staple in cosplay to fill seams and just blend your edges a little bit. Super helpful. You can get it at any home improvement store. I've covered a lot of basics about Worbla. It is a thermoplastic that you heat up and then you can adhere it to other things or even bond it to itself for a nice strong surface. The difference with Finest art I have noticed is that it's got a bit of a texture to it. It's not as smooth, but it's got a lot more stretch too. I like it a lot. This is my first time using it and it's just so easy. Look at that. Look at me just doing this. Like, I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but you wouldn't know that. I would say Transpa art is best if you need some sort of transparent or opaque effect. The black art is best if you want a nice smooth surface you're not going to have to do a lot of work on, and the Finest art is really nice if you do want a little bit of texture and a little bit of grit. You can also sand it down if you do just have only Finest art and you do need a smooth surface. I am using a silicone tip tool to really define the curves and edges, but you could use your fingers in a pinch. And this is what she looks like all covered. And this is what she looks like all painted. I will show you the process of the paint job on the Pauldrons, but didn't record it for the underbust. Just look at it. Ooh, ha.
Fight!
And now we're on to the Pauldrons. Originally when I did this, I used construction paper for the details and then got smart enough to decide to test that with Worbla to see if it would show, and it does not. So much for that plan. I am going to undo the work that we did in the previous video and cut the top detail layer out of foam on my Cricut. Pro tip, if your mat is trash like mine, you can use a little easy tack to help it stay down a little bit better, which will make your cuts a lot cleaner on the Cricut. Then you use a little heat gun to bring out the details because your girl got a new one. And then you're gonna go ahead and cut all of this stuff out. I'm not gonna explain too much of this. You can go to the part 1 video. It's the same steps, just again, in foam and not construction paper. In the interest of cleaner cuts, I decided to take my little knife and my blade and just cut out the little pieces just to make sure that nothing left jagged edges. The easy tack on the back of the foam also helped adhere it to my glass board, which made it so much easier. Adding a little packing tape to the front to keep the details together, and then I'm gonna take it to go get contact cemented. Now, I am being very liberal with my contact cement in this video. You'll want to get nice, smooth coats, but your girl had a deadline and I needed to keep it moving, so got a little sloppy. But the best way is to make sure it is nice and smooth layers of contact cement. Then once the layers are dry, approximately 15 minutes at the least, you can go ahead and stick them together, and then I remove the packaging tape and use the packaging tape and the end of a brush to clean out any of the excess contact cement. Then I used a sanding bit on my Dremel 4000 to clean up the edges and bevel them a little. So we got the bottom pauldrons done, and now I just need to work on the tops. And I was going to do something about this anyway, because if you'll notice, they're both facing the same way, and that's incorrect. And they also don't fill the space very well. So this was going to get redone anyway, so let's get to it.
One more time! Faster!
Though I've already covered Warbler tips, I thought I would add in a few little pro tips here and there that might help you. So first and foremost, the thing that I am working on is a glass cutting mat, a tempered glass cutting mat. And it is wonderful, especially for things like Warbler, because it keeps and holds the heat. So it keeps the heat on the material on the top and the bottom when I'm working on it. So I prefer to work on this surface when I can. That's not always an option depending on the size of the piece, but if it is, you're darn right I'm going to use it. One of my favorite little hacks to get those nice crispy edges is to use a project iron and a little bit of parchment paper to just melt it down a little bit. You don't want it to be on a very high heat. You are not trying to melt your Warbler, you are just trying to reactivate it so that it shapes down to the form, and that way you get those nice crispy edges. I also used it on the inside to just make sure everything in there was clean. I'm not gonna Warbler cover the inside, I just want the top done. Warbler's expensive, y'all, okay? I don't even yawl that often, but for this, I'll yawl. For the paint job, I am using a high fill primer, and I did 4 coats on each pauldron. 4 on the top side and 2 on the underside. The underside is just going to be getting black paint. It's not going to be seen, but it might poke a little bit in some pictures, so I like to keep that black and basic. It is not the star of the show, okay? For the top coat, I am using some Liquitex Gloss Medium and some gold pigment powder, and mixing that together and doing a couple layers. I did 4 in total on the top, and then I went in and did the shadowing. I've covered shadowing on a few of my videos. I'll add the one in for the fake cinnamon roll, since that gets into a little more of the detail, especially when it comes to using oil paint for your shadows. To blend it a little better and make sure there aren't a lot of paint lines or streaks, I'm using a little bit of water and just going over it to smooth everything down. Thanks to my good Judy Cocoa Sugar Cosplay. She is amazing. She teaches me so many amazing things. Go follow her on everything. Love her. shadowing is a very trust the process type of thing. I am not the most exceptional painter, but I've been getting a lot better at it just through effort. You have to try, you have to actually do the things, and then you will start to see the results. Just stick with it, you can do it.
Fight!
And now it's on to the belt. We are going to be cutting the base out of 6mm EVA foam from Masked Dad Workshop. I am not sponsored or partnered. I did win this roll in a giveaway, and honestly, the foam is amazing. It's really, really dense. It takes heat really, really well, and I could get a lot of great detail. For the leather texture, I am using a cosplay hack. I don't remember where I picked this one up, but you essentially use some tin foil, and I like to heat up the foam a little bit and then just crunch the tin foil in different patterns and just stamp it directly into the foam, and it creates this really nice texture that mimics leather pretty well, especially once it's all painted. I used this effect for my Wariel cosplay. I don't have video of Wariel. She was a very early build in my cosplay career, and she's a personal favorite to this day. For the paint job, I just did a base coat of brown, and now I am rubbing in some oil paint to really define those shadows and give it nice texture and detail. Jade has two little accessory pieces on her belt that are these sort of rounded gold rings. You can usually use wooden dowels. That's the go-to for most cosplayers. I didn't have that, but I did have some air hose tubing, some wire, and some glue. So I just made a tube out of that. Yeah, I could try to explain it, but you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm using a bottle to basically shape it, make sure that it sticks into the right roundness. And then we go on to cover it in Worbla. And I use my nails like the evolutionary tools that they are to blend the edges and make sure that she's good for a final cut. Still needed to blend them down a little bit more, but just a little bit of heat and finger manipulation and we're there. One of the ring accessories has little spike details on it, and for that I'm going to be using some scrap cardstock I had in my inventory. I keep a lot of scrap of a lot of different things. They're very useful. To attach the spikes to the ring, I am using 1-inch wire brads, which are similar to nails, but they are a lot thinner and they don't have a very big head on them. Then I secure the cardstock spike to the nail using a little bit of hot glue on the top, and then I fill it in on the back as well. And then we just give it a little Worbla covering, wrap it around the edges, and bam! I didn't get any video of me making the belt buckles, they're just Worbla that I shaped. So as an apology, here's an adorable video of Project Manager McDennis. Using a little painter's tape to protect our golden details, and then we will take this off to get primed and painted. For the little straps attaching the golden ring to the belt buckles, I used the same technique, but instead I did it on 2mm EVA foam, and I'm just securing them with hot glue, which is not the best option. Contact cement would be better, but we zoom it. We don't have time. And I just make sure that I cover the edge on the back side as well so that it stays sealed from both sides. Otherwise this will lift and eventually pull your paint off as well. I like to use an ice cube to help set the hot glue faster and give it a nice clear finish. When I go back in to upgrade this design, I will carve in some little notches on the inside of the belt so this sits a little flatter, but for the time being, she works nicely and she's functional. We love functional pieces. Now this part. This part was clearly a rush job, and it looks like it. I don't like it, I'm not very proud of it, but I'm only leaving it in here in case you ever need to quickly rush your own things and try to do a much better job, hopefully, than I did at this belt buckle. It is ugly, it is not great, but here we go. 2mm EVA foam. I am drawing out the details in Sharpie, and then I am just going to go over them with hot glue and a little bit of twine, some different levels of twine so we get those varied sizes. And then I paint them. They are hideous, but here they are in case you ever need them or want to make your own little details very quickly and very cheaply. A kind soul by the name of M22 shared a hot glue hack with me about freezing your glue sticks so that way you don't get those nasty strings all over the place. Unfortunately, I had already done this before I heard that advice. So if you have nasty little glue strings and things that you need to clean up, get a metal tool and a heat gun, and then you can just kind of use that to smooth things down and clean up your edges. For the other belt buckle, it's got more of a relief style detail, so I am just using a metal tool to scratch away at the surface of the 2mm foam, occasionally making cuts and heating them up so they'll expand, but not a whole lot because I used hot glue for the edges, and that's why you want to use contact cement for these types of things, not hot glue. But again, we are rushing. We do not have time. It is not a competition piece. We're just trying to get to a shoot.
Fight!
I saved my favorite piece for last, the claws. I partially chose this design because of the claws, but also I just really love Jade so much. And for this, we are going to be sculpting them out of Worbla. First, I cut out strips that were approximately the circumference of the upper portion of each of my fingers, and then heated those up and formed them directly around my finger for the nice, snug fit. If you have heat issues or you are sensitive to heat, I would recommend putting on some sort of a heat protective glove, or if you have a modeling hand you can use, you could do that. I prefer to do it this way. It doesn't bother me all that much. I would say that warmed up Worbla has about the same heat as one of those like jelly heating pads that you put in the microwave for about 30 seconds. It's not scalding, but it can get very warm, so be careful. For the claw portion, I am just sculpting a piece of Worbla, heating it up, smushing it down, and then I'm going to shape that directly on my nail. Because I have very long nails, I like to try to shape it around my nail so that way it kind of covers that too. I don't want my nails sticking up in the back. And I really like the thicker, denser claws. Jade's claws are pretty flat, but look at that. I love it. Look at it. For the connecting structure, I cut a smaller piece of Worbla that will go around the upper portion of my finger, around where my nail bed is, and attach the claw essentially. And then I heat that up, shape it around my finger, and smush the claw down onto it. And that gives us this effect. Then I cut two smaller strips that are going to be used at the sides to support the top portion, that is the claw, around the finger band. Don't worry about the edges. We are going to heat shape those down using a metal tool and our heat gun, and then we're just going to blend the edges out and make sure that all of the structure is one, so that way when we go to Dremel it or do any additional cuts and shaping, we won't lose pieces of our structure. You want to apply a good amount of pressure and smooth it out. Keep in mind that tool is going to be very hot, so do be careful. For the claws, I needed to do a combination of sanding and a bit of shaping. So I'm using a sanding bit in my Dremel 4000, and then I have a cordless Dremel that I have a cutting bit in that we will use to sculpt in some of the smaller, finer details. Given the amount that I had to cut out, I definitely could have taken more time with the general shaping of the Worbla pieces so I could avoid some of this, but it was honestly just easier for me to work in this fashion instead of thinking about it from a pattern first and then do all that. It was just the way my brain was working at the time, you know? Hindsight is 20/20, which is to say terrible, horrible. We get them all outfitted in our paint hutch, and I'm going to do primer. These will get 2 coats of primer each, and then we will get into paint. But just look at that. Just look at it. If my hands could look like this all the time and I could actually get things done, I would look like this all the time. I have a lot of sensory issues around my fingertips being covered, so I like to make sure that my fingers can get out, which is why I didn't make that top band go all the way around so I can free my finger as needed. And that takes us through today's video. Next up, we're gonna get into the final dress and then my shoot day with Nerd.0 and a little bit of vlogging. Want to take a moment to say thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Kao Windriel and Paula, thank you guys so much for all of your support. If you want to see some behind the scenes content or see what I'm actually up to, I've completed quite a few projects since my last upload. Apologies for the slow speed, life has been throwing me all kinds of curveballs. But you can see all of the behind the scenes stuff over there or get updates and see what I'm working on currently on my Patreon. We've got tiers as low as $1 and added benefits on the higher tiers. If you want to see real-time updates, you can find me over on Instagram. I am in my stories almost every single day. Well, my friends, that's the end, but we'll be back to craft again, especially if you like, comment, and subscribe.